By the end of this video, you will have a DSPy program that automatically figures out the best prompt for your task without you writing a single prompt string. So there will be no you are helpful assistant or you are the world-class expert or something like that. You will describe what you want and DSPy compiles it and do the prompting for you. So let's build it. So here's the thing that every developer hits. You are building an AI feature and it works okay, but not great. So you start tweaking the prompt. You add think step by step. You add you are an expert. You try few short examples. You move sentences around. An hour later, you have written something that looks like what we see now here on the screen. Like you are the world-class expert, and this with 20 years of experience. Your task is to classify the sentiment of the following text, and so on. And you're providing some example. It's fragile. Change the model, sometimes it breaks. Change the task slightly, maybe it will break also. And nobody actually know why this wording works better than slightly different wording. DSPy, developed by Stanford, treats this as a compiler problem, not a writing problem. Instead of writing prompts, you write a program, you define inputs, outputs, and what reasoning step you need. Then DSPy optimizes the prompt automatically using your examples and metric. It's the difference between writing assembly by hand versus writing Python and letting the compiler figure out the machine code. Today we are building a sentiment classifier and question answering chain, and we are going to watch DSPy improve its own prompting in front of you. So I will start with the installation. I'm using Poetry here, but you can just install it with pip command. Pip install DSPy. For me, I will just type Poetry add DSPy, and then we just let it finish the installation. And after finishing installation, I prepared here a small script file, and you can see that we start by importing the DSPy. If you want to use OpenAI instead, you can just swap the model. So for me here, I used Ollama, which I installed locally with the API base for the local host. And yeah, normally Ollama doesn't require any key. So here you can just put any kind of API key. But if you want to use OpenAI instead, you can just swap the model. You can just write something like OpenAI GPT-4o or something and add your key. DSPy is model agnostic. Same code, different backend, just like a light LLM. So I created this class, a sentiment classifier, using the DSPy signature. The core concept in DSPy is a signature. It's just an input field and output field. So there is no prompt texting here. So what's missing? Obviously that there is no you are an expert or think step by step or something like that. And also there is no JSON formatting instruction. It just here what comes in, here what comes out, and DSPy figures out the rest. The doc string is your task description. That's literally the only prompt you write. So here we are writing classify the sentiment of a product review. So here if we go back to our demo, I just prepared this piece of code, and here we are just trying to wrap it in a module and run it. So we have the classifier DSPy.predict and giving the sentiment classifier that we just defined, and then giving to the classifier some kind of review, and we will see the result that we will get. So if we call Python DSPy demo, we can see here the result. It will take some time because here I'm just calling the local Ollama, and we see here the result. So we see that positive 0.9. So we get the sentiment and we get the confidence score. It's structured, typed, and it's correct. So there is no prompt engineering here. So watch what happens if I ask something ambiguous. So if I just change here the review prompt to something ambiguous, like it arrives on time. So, and then try to run it again, we can see neuter, like low confidence, which makes sense. The model is uncertain and DSPy surfaces that. So just let's go one step further and speak about the chain of thoughts. So what if you want the model to reason before answering? So normally that's a whole prompt rewrite. So in DSPy, it's just a one word instead of predict. So maybe here we need to change it to chain of thought, I guess. So we need to change it here to chain of thought, and then we can just give back any kind of reviews that make sense. So the product is fine, I guess, nothing special. And we can now print the new result part, which is the reasoning. This part or this new field will be added automatically by DSPy. So we don't need to do anything for our sentiment classifier. So if we just run it again, so we have this error. Yeah, just a few typos, I guess. So just run it again. And we see now we have the reasoning here. So the reviewer mentions that the product is fine, which is just a neutral or a positive sentiment, but also uses the phrase nothing special, which can indicate a negative sentiment. That's why it's giving us neutral and 0.6 as a confidence. So obviously from the reasoning that we just mentioned, the model is thinking before the answer. You didn't write think step by step, but DSPy injected that into prompt automatically when you switched from the predict to chain of thought. Now let's build something real, like a two-step pipeline. First, extract the topic from review, and then classify sentiment about that specific topic. This is where DSPy shines over raw prompting. So I prepared a set of classes that I will just copy here. I will just call the file sentiment pipeline and just paste the classes. It's all about just having one class for extracting the topic. So this will just extract the main topic that we are discussing in the product review. And then we have a class for the topic sentiment, which is classifies the sentiment about that topic. And then we have the review analyzer, which is a DSPy module. So it's wrapping the both extract and the topic sentiment by first extracting the topic and then just classifying the sentiment and then producing the prediction. So if we just need to run this analyzer, so we go back to our demo, I think we can just remove all this and just have the review analyzer that we just defined. And if we just put a review, something like the camera is stunning, but the battery dies in 3 hours, and then we try to analyze it, printing the topic, the sentiment, and the reason. Here we should see the result in a moment. So the topic is about the battery life, and the sentiment is negative because it dies in 3 hours. So we have the reason here. Although the camera has a impressive feature, its poor battery life is a major drawback. 2 LLM calls, 0 prompt strings written by hand. The whole pipeline is defined in terms of data flow, inputs and outputs, and also there is no text instructions. So let's zoom out a bit on what we actually built. So we wrote 3 things, like the data shapes and not the prompt. A signature is just a typed function definition. There is input, output, and one line description. DSPy takes that and constructs the actual prompt under the hood. We use 2 module types. Like we use the predict first, which give us like a direct answer. And then we use a chain of thought, the reasoning first, then answering, one word swap, completely different prompting strategy. We chain modules in our pipeline with a review analyzer, and we have it in the forward method. And this is just Python. If you know how to write a function, you know how to write a DSPy program. So every prompt you have ever written by hand, you guess that think step by step could help. You guess that putting example before the question is better than the after. DSPy has an optimizer called the Teleprompter that actually tests these things against your data and picks what works. We didn't cover that today because it needs a labeled example to optimize against, but that's the next level. The mental model shift is stop thinking about the prompt as the things you ship, think about them as compiled artifact. You write a program, DSPy write the prompt. Thanks for watching. If you want more of this, like the video, subscribe with the notification on, and share it with your friends. We release new videos every week on AI development, agents, and developer tooling. Thanks for being here.